So, imagine living in a town where the local fire department physically cannot reach the third floor of a burning building.
Yeah, they just literally do not have the equipment.
Right. But then, just down the street, Amazon is breaking ground on a state-of-the-art billion-dollar AI data center.
Is such a massive disconnect.
It really is. And today we are doing a deep dive into the quiet, often totally bizarre crises that are happening, late at night in local city halls across the country.
Exactly. We are pulling directly from the official agenda and an hours-long transcript from the June 1st, 2026 City Council meeting in Gilroy, California.
Right, Gilroy? The official seal actually says it's a community with a spice for life.
Yeah, and what you find in these documents is definitely spicy, but also just fascinating.
Yeah.
Because local government, it isn't just about zoning permits and fixing potholes.
No, not at all.
It is the arena where these massive global macro forces literally collide with hyperlocal reality.
So today, we are going to look at how a city council attempts to manage the explosion of artificial intelligence, federal immigration policy, and the underground drug trade.
All at the same time.
Right. All while desperately trying to scrape together enough money to just keep a local park open. It gives you an entirely new perspective on what local officials are actually dealing with.
You realize very quickly that a city council is essentially the final catch basin for every societal problem we haven't figured out how to solve at the state or federal level.
Oh, totally.
And usually the first place that friction shows up is in how a city manages its own local commerce.
Which brings us to our first story involving a 72-year-old convenience store owner.
Right.
He has been running a shop called the Rock Zone in Gilroy for 30 years, but he found himself standing in front of the council, literally fighting for his business's life.
Yeah, his tobacco retailer's permit and potentially his entire business license was up for suspension.
Because the police had been watching him.
Exactly. The police had conducted a series of undercover operations at his store in late 2024 and early 2025.
And what they found is just a perfect snapshot of the modern gray market.
It really is.
So the undercover officer walks in and buys psilocybin chocolate bars.
Which, just for context, psilocybin is the active ingredient in magic mushrooms.
Right. And in California, selling it is a felony. It is a controlled substance categorized right alongside meth or fentanyl.
But the store clerk, he treats it like he is selling craft beer.
Yeah. The transcript shows the employee actually giving the undercover cop advice.
Oh, it's wild.
He tells them to do, quote, microdoses and warns them not to eat the whole bar at once or, quote, you might be tripping.
It highlights this very strange cultural dissonance. The employee is casually acting like a sommelier for psychedelics, but legally they are trafficking a Schedule I narcotic.
And that wasn't even the only thing, right?
No. On top of that, the store was cited for selling unflavored and flavored tobacco, like Zumo nicotine pouches and hookah products.
And they weren't enforcing the door rules?
Right, they were completely ignoring the strict 21 and over entry rule at the front door.
So I read the defense attorney's argument from the transcript, and honestly, the bureaucracy involved sounds suffocating.
Oh, it's a nightmare.
The lawyer physically held up this document called the Unflavored Tobacco List, or the UTL.
Issued by the state of California.
Right, and he told the council it was 2 inches thick. 2 inches.
That is a lot of regulations.
It dictates exactly what can and cannot be sold in the state. And the lawyer argued it only came out in December 2025, which was after some of these undercover buys had already taken place.
So the defense was essentially building a case around regulatory whiplash.
Yeah, like how could they possibly keep up?
Exactly. The state of California have been aggressively trying to curb youth vaping, and to do that, they have created this absolute labyrinth of compliance rules that just change constantly.
Yeah.
The attorney was arguing that the 72-year-old owner was operating in good faith, but, was simply buried by a shifting 2-inch thick rulebook.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. Because the state is already punishing him, right?
Yes, heavily.
The lawyer noted the owner is facing around $70,000 in state penalties.
Wow.
Because the state can fine you per individual item seized.
Right.
So if the guy is already staring down financial ruin from the state, why is the local city council piling on by suspending his license to sell tobacco for an entire year?
It feels redundant.
Exactly. It feels a bit like hitting a fly with a sledgehammer. If I loan you my car and you speed, I don't get the ticket. So if a clerk sells a mushroom bar, why crush the owner?
Well, what's fascinating here is that this brings up a critical legal mechanism that governs how cities operate.
Okay.
It's the concept of strict liability in municipal and regulatory law.
Strict pliability.
Yeah. In criminal law, you generally need to prove mens rea or a guilty mind.
Like you have to prove the person intended to commit the crime.
Exactly. But in regulatory law, intent is completely irrelevant. Yes. The city grants you the privilege of a license, and the condition of that license is total compliance.
Oh, I see.
So if a violation happens under your roof, regardless of whether you personally handed over the illicit chocolate bar or if you were just confused by the state's tobacco list, you are liable.
So the city's perspective is basically, we don't care if the state rules are confusing. Figuring it out is the cost of doing business.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it's not redundant to them. It is a separate jurisdiction sending a completely separate signal.
Right.
The hearing officer originally recommended a 6-month suspension.
Which is already a long time.
But the council overruled that. They voted 7-0 for a much harsher 1-year suspension.
Wow, 7-0.
They are using this store to send a chilling effect through the entire local market. The message is clear. If you allow illicit substances, you will lose your primary revenue stream.
I suppose if they don't draw a hard line inside private storefronts, they lose total control. But, what struck me reading this agenda is that this inability to maintain order on a micro level, like inside a single shop, is just a symptom of a much larger enforcement rot.
Yeah.
And that rot bleeds directly into the public square.
You see that transition perfectly in the intense neighborhood dispute over Los Animas Veterans Park.
Oh man, this part of the transcript was intense.
It was a debate that really forces us to look at the physical infrastructure of a city.
So Las Animas is this major community park in Gilroy, but since 2020, 2 of its parking lots, the Wayland and Hannah lots, have been chained shut behind these massive swing gates.
Just totally locked down.
And the residents whose homes border these lots want those gates permanently locked.
Right. They submitted a petition with 130 signatures.
And their public comments were harrowing. I mean, visceral.
They described the parking lot as basically an unmanaged hazard zone.
Residents talked about waking up to find hypodermic needles literally tossed over their backyard fences. They described drunk drivers smashing their vehicles into the park barricades and these massive alcohol-fueled parties vibrating their windows late into the morning.
So from their perspective, they view those padlocks as the only barrier protecting their families.
Yeah, exactly.
But then you have an equally vocal contingent of community members, particularly the local tennis players,
Right.
and they view those padlocks as a surrender.
Because it's a public park.
Exactly. They argued that by locking up a taxpayer-funded public amenity, the city is effectively letting a few lawbreakers hold a community asset hostage.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I have to admit, when I first read that, my immediate reaction was, why is this even a debate?
What do you mean?
Well, if you have people throwing parties and doing drugs in a public park at 2 a.m., you don't condemn the park, you just send a police cruiser to break it up.
Right. Well,
Like, if you shut down a whole public parking lot because of a few bad actors, isn't that like closing the highway just because someone was speeding? Why not just have the police patrol it?
that is the logical assumption, for sure.
Right.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, when you dive into the municipal mechanics, the logic falls apart because of severe resource starvation.
Starvation.
Yeah. During the meeting, the police captain laid bare their operational reality. Their staffing levels haven't increased since 2020.
Wow. Not at all.
Not at all. And the private security contractors the city hires, they're spread across multiple parks from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Oh, I see.
They physically do not have the manpower to just park a squad car at Los Animas every night to act as a deterrent.
So the city is utilizing a padlock because they literally cannot afford a police officer.
Yes, it is the cheapest form of security.
Yeah.
But then, the Public Works Director introduced a secondary, completely invisible hurdle that makes this even more complicated.
Oh, yeah, the ADA thing.
Exactly. The moment you unlock that gate, you trigger federal compliance laws under the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Wait, I was so confused by this part of the transcript.
It is very dense.
Why does opening a gate suddenly require a massive construction budget? The concrete is already poured. The parking lot is already there.
So it has to do with how federal law views the, quote, alteration or reopening of a public facility.
Okay.
When that parking lot was originally paved decades ago, it met the standards of the time. But since it has been closed, it is considered dormant.
Okay, I'm following.
The second a city council takes official action to reintroduce it for public use, federal law treats it as a new or altered service provision.
Oh,
This means it must immediately comply with 2026 ADA standards.
and the current concrete doesn't meet those standards.
No, it doesn't. The Public Works Director explained that the concrete has a cross-slope issue.
Across slope.
Yeah, when you pave a parking lot, you have to tilt it slightly, so rain drains off into the gutters.
Right, so it doesn't flood.
But if that tilt, that cross-slope, is more than a 2% grade, it becomes non-compliant because a wheelchair could lose stability and roll sideways.
Oh, that makes sense.
So, to legally open the gate, the city has to bring in contractors, rip up the non-compliant concrete, and re-pour it at the exact required slope.
That sounds incredibly expensive.
We're talking thousands of dollars just to turn a key in a padlock.
It's just a staggering web of tripwires.
It really is.
A simple question from a tennis player like, can I park my car? Pangeon forces a council to navigate neighborhood safety, severe police understaffing, and federal disability construction triggers.
All at once.
How did they even resolve it?
Well, it was a highly contested 4-3 vote.
Very close.
They essentially opted for a strained compromise. They decided to open the lots on a trial basis, but only on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and strictly from 7:00 a.m. to 9:00 p.m.
And the most incredible detail from the transcript, they essentially handed the problem to the brand new police chief.
Yes, who was introduced to the city on his very first day during this exact meeting.
Like, welcome to the job, chief. Figure out how to patrol this park without any extra staff.
It is municipal triage, and it really exposes the underlying disease infecting the entire city's operations.
Right.
Because the city cannot afford to enforce the rules in the vape shop, and they cannot afford to patrol the local park. Both of these issues stem directly from a broken municipal tax base.
Which launches us into the absolute most high-stakes item on this agenda.
The funding cliff.
The council spent hours agonizing over whether to place a 0.25% dedicated public safety sales tax on the November 2026 ballot.
The financial reality they are facing is incredibly grim. City staff projected this quarter-cent tax would generate about $4.5 million annually.
Now, a quarter cent doesn't sound like a heavy burden,
Right.
If I buy a $10 sandwich, it's an extra 2.5 cents.
Very small.
But what that money buys, or more accurately, what the city lacks without it, is genuinely frightening.
Oh, it is terrifying.
A representative for the local firefighters addressed the council and revealed that Gilroy has about 40 full-time firefighters to protect nearly 62,000 residents.
He noted it was the lowest staffing per capita in the entire county.
But the detail that stopped me in my tracks was the ladder truck.
Yeah, that was shocking.
The department does not have a full-time staffed ladder truck. They are relying on 24-foot and 35-foot ground ladders.
Which fundamentally limits their operational capacity.
Right.
As urban areas grow, they build vertically to accommodate population density, 3-story apartment complexes, multi-story commercial buildings.
And a ground ladder can't reach that high.
A ground ladder can realistically only reach the second story of a burning building.
That is just terrifying.
Furthermore, ladder trucks aren't just for reaching high windows. They provide critical elevated water streams.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
And they allow firefighters to safely access roofs to cut ventilation holes, which stops a fire from flashing over.
Wow.
Without that apparatus, the city is essentially crossing its fingers every time an alarm goes off in a mid-rise building.
They are playing Russian roulette with public safety.
They really are.
So my immediate thought is you need $4.5 million to literally reach people trapped on a third floor, just past the tax.
Right.
But while the council is agonizing over pennies, the public comment session shows the city is being invaded by massive billion-dollar external forces.
Completely outside their control.
The council was bombarded by citizens who were furious about a new Amazon AWS artificial intelligence data center that is quietly being constructed right in the city limits.
And residents were demanding intervention.
Yeah.
They're terrified about how a massive AI facility is going to stress the city's electricity grid.
And drain the local water supply, which, AI data centers require in massive quantities just for cooling their servers.
It creates an intense paradox for a local government.
How so?
Well, an Amazon data center brings an infusion of property tax revenue. And as the Amazon representative noted at the meeting, it brings 90 jobs.
Okay, that sounds good on paper.
But these facilities are extractive. They demand immense infrastructural resources, like water and power, from a city that, as we just learned, doesn't even have the infrastructure to staff a fire truck.
Right. And if an AI data center wasn't enough of a global issue landing right on their doorstep, The transcript shows the council then unanimously voted 7-0 on a resolution opposing a proposed federal ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement detention center near their city.
Yeah. When you read the transcript, you can see the intense pressure that council was under regarding federal immigration enforcement.
Dozens of residents spoke up.
Dozens. Educators, social workers, they all pleaded with the council to protect the local undocumented and immigrant community.
They feared a federal facility would act as a massive disruption to the social fabric of the city.
And the council's unanimous vote against the ICE facility was a very clear statement of their local priorities.
Right, a 7-0 vote.
But it also underscores the sheer weight of the issues placed on their agenda. I mean, in one night, they are asked to formulate a stance on federal immigration policy, manage the explosive growth of artificial intelligence, and figure out how to afford a fire truck.
It is mind-blowing. So what does this all mean for you listening to this?
That is the big question.
Connecting all these dots, if the city is dealing with massive AI data centers and taking stances on federal immigration battles, and their firefighters can't even reach the roof of an apartment building, why wouldn't they unanimously vote to just put the tax on the ballot to get that $4.5 million?
This raises an important question about the mechanics of municipal finance.
Right.
Because specifically in California, those mechanics are deeply restrictive. Placing a special tax on the ballot requires a supermajority.
I need you to explain that because I just don't understand why a simple majority wouldn't work.
So in California, a general tax where the money goes into a big pot for the city to use on anything they want, that only requires a 50% plus one majority from voters.
Okay, that makes sense.
But a special tax, which legally ring-fences the money so it can only be spent on a specific purpose, like public safety and fire trucks, that requires a 2/3 supermajority.
Wait, 2/3?
Yes. 66.7% of voters have to approve it.
Getting 2/3 of people to agree on what day of the week it is feels impossible, let alone agreeing to tax themselves more.
Exactly. And the council members know this. They are hyper-aware of tax fatigue.
Oh, absolutely.
Several council members pointed out that inflation has devastated household budgets.
Yep.
And on top of that, county and regional transportation agencies have already passed their own taxes, stacking the overall sales tax burden higher and higher.
The city is essentially at the bottom of the food chain, trying to grab the last quarter cent available.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And this specific measure had actually failed to reach that 2/3 threshold in previous years.
Oh, so they've tried this before.
They have. So the council members were expressing deep skepticism that voters would support it now. They argued that before asking a tapped-out public for more money, the city needed to prove it could spend its existing budget more efficiently.
Oh, man. One council member even suggested the city needed to implement AI internally to cut administrative costs before going back to the taxpayers.
So because placing a tax measure on the ballot requires 5 out of the 7 council members to say yes,
Oh, let me guess.
the motion failed. It only received 4 affirmative votes.
Which means the entire public safety funding crisis is just frozen.
Completely unresolved.
No new ladder truck, no new police patrols for the parks. They spent hours agonizing over it, and the math just wouldn't work.
The structural barriers of tax law literally paralyzed them.
Stepping back and looking at this entire deep dive, it is remarkable how a single, quote-unquote, boring government transcript reveals the invisible nervous system of a community.
It really does.
You start at the absolute micro level, an undercover cop busting a clerk for selling a magic mushroom chocolate bar.
Which highlights the crush of state bureaucracy on a single business owner.
Right. And then that inability to cleanly manage local commerce expands outward into the public parks,
where a lack of funding and federal disability laws prevent a city from simply unlocking a gate.
which then spirals upward into a paralyzing debate over municipal tax law, all while the massive shadows of Amazon AI servers and federal immigration policies loom right over the city limits.
It all funnels down into one room, onto the desks of 7 local officials trying to figure out what to do next.
It is the ultimate exercise in forced compromise.
There are no clean solutions, only trade-offs.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to chew on today.
Yeah.
We spend so much of our time and energy glued to the national news. We obsess over presidential elections, waiting for sweeping federal changes to dramatically improve our lives.
But in reality, the decisions that have the most immediate impact on your physical reality.
Right, whether an ambulance can actually reach your apartment in time, whether your local park is safe for your kids to run around in, or whether a tech giant is quietly straining your city's power grid.
Those decisions aren't made in Washington.
Exactly. They're made by a handful of exhausted local officials late on a random Monday night. How much of your daily peace of mind is dictated by a hyperlocal budget shortfall you didn't even know existed?
It definitely changes the way you look at a city council agenda.
It absolutely does. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We will catch you on the next one.